Hi, this is Anita from Real Estate Crunch. Today we're continuing to talk a little bit about eminent domain and also condemnation and some of the laws. But I want to specifically talk about a law that was sort of a landmark law that happened quite recently in the United States. It is Kelo versus the City of New London, and this is considered one of the major laws about when it comes to eminent domain. And what I honestly feel, I'll say straight out front at the beginning, I feel was an abuse of eminent domain. Susette Kelo and her husband had always wanted to own a house on the water. And in 1977, they were able to achieve that dream by purchasing and lovingly restoring a quaint pink Victorian house where the Thames River met the Long Island Sound. As a registered nurse, she took great care in this house. This was a pride and joy. They loved the house. They loved the property. When she purchased the property, it was so overgrown that the weeds that she needed to hatch to reach the front door. So they actually spent a lot of work and a lot of loving care on this little house that became known as the Little Pink House. However, the happiness was disrupted when one day on Thanksgiving in 2000, she received a notice from the New London Development Center Corporation, which was informing them that they would have to vacate the home by March of 2001. If not, they'd be removed by the police. So the situation got worse because her husband almost got nearly killed in a car accident, so she was dealing with a lot of these personal issues along the way. There also was down the river a little ways, there was another settlement, which is called the Fort Trumbull community, and the Drury family had lived there for a long time. They also received the same thing where basically the government, the city of New London, was saying that this is for the better good of the community and we are going to basically forcibly remove you from your property. This decision ended up going to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court's decision shocked many. It was 5-4 decision. The court ruled that the city's actions to transfer the land from one private owner to another private entity for economic development was a permissible public use under the Fifth Amendment. So what's interesting about this is normally under the eminent domain, it's about for the public good. You're gonna do a library. You're going to do a hospital. You're going to build a bridge. You're going to somehow have a freeway. It's not taking private property and giving it to another private entity. And this is the case what the New London was doing. They were deciding that this property, was a valuable property there on the river, and it could be better used to serve the public, and it should go from one private individual and the government giving it to another private individual. And this really sent a shockwave through many states and others because of the eminent domain law. Many, with myself included, I feel like this was an abuse of the law because the law clearly states that it's for public use, not for private use. But the Supreme Court ruled that in this case, it could be used for what was known as, this private use. Because of this law, several things happened, which was very interesting because many states saw this law and became very, afraid or nervous about eminent domain and how could this be abused. So 47 states strengthened their eminent domain laws. There was, 12 states made constitutional amendments. 11 states have either strengthened protections for property owners or outright rejected the principles outlined in the Kelo case. There's been a lot of community organizing activism where people saying, look, you cannot take my property away for these reasons. Because let me backtrack and say exactly what happened here. So the government takes this property away from Kelo and her husband. They, pull down the house. In fact, even the house got saved. It's become a museum. So it still, became this symbol of this sort of like eminent domain there. But, for the property developer that they had hired, which the city did not do their due diligence, didn't have the money, and the land ended up being vacant, and it was vacant for over 20 years. It's just very, very recently now that almost 20 years later, that they've started construction on the land, and the person developing is developing into high-rise apartments, which will do absolutely nothing to help the city of New London. So in other words, the city took away the personal property of a private citizen who had, worked that property, cared for that property, loved that property, to give it to another private entity that was supposed to develop it for so-called, eminent domain, or for the good use of the public. That never happened. The public stood vacant, and now today is just being developed. That to me seems like an outright abuse of the eminent domain law, that a person should not be forced to give up their property just because the city's decided that they want to build more apartment blocks or whatever else that they want to build. I've written a blog post on this if you'd like to be able to learn more about this landmark case. It's really an interesting case for, I believe, any property owner to understand, because this is, especially if you might have property that the city might say they want to take one day. This, of course, would be a case that would be cited. This did go all the way to Supreme Court. But yet it's been a controversial case, so many states have now taken action against this Supreme Court case because they feel like I feel that there was an abuse of the law when it came to the specific case about eminent domain. I've written a blog post called Kelo and the City of New London, a case of eminent domain abuse. You can read about it there. You can read about the case. You can see a picture of the cute little pink house. And you can learn a little bit more about this law and how it affects property owners everywhere. Thank you so much for listening to our podcast. We hope that you've enjoyed this. And if you've enjoyed it, please give us a thumbs up. We'd love to hear from you too. We'd love to hear your comments, specifically when it comes to things like this Kelo case. Do you agree or don't agree with it? I disagree that the city should not be able to just take someone's property away just because they happen to have found a nice place on a lake or on a river, and that they decide that they want to build apartment blocks. That is not the correct use of this law. I'd like to thank you so much for being a part of our community, and recommend us to others. Let them know about us. Thank you so much.